Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 342. Today we have an interview with Wayne Tingle. He is in Nicaragua. He's a missionary there, but he's also spreading jiu-jitsu to the students that he's working with in the school system. It's really an interesting conversation, unlike anything we've ever had. And I want to thank JP Garcia for setting this up. I'm here with my good buddies, Joe and Gary. My name is Byron. Guys, I want to get this thing started off with a quote from John C. Maxwell. You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. And man, I think that's a great way to look at how long-term things are, and if you could just make that change to your daily routine and it becomes normalized, that's a good... It's like, you think of those meteorites or comets that are going to hit the Earth and kill us all, they're like, well, if we could find it beforehand and just change it a little bit, it'll be...
I've seen that movie.
It'll make a big difference. So just making a slight change to your daily routine could have a huge impact over the course of, weeks, months, years, decades, or your lifetime.
I agree. And I don't think it has to necessarily be something completely new or different than what you're already doing, but maybe just an improvement. When I'm at work, I set my alarm for about 6:30, 6:45, depending on what I got going on. When I'm home for my 2 weeks off, I don't set an alarm. I just kind of wake up at that time on my own. So if I decided getting up at 5 would be a good improvement for me, I wouldn't start setting my alarm clock at 5. I'd start setting it like 6:15 for a while, 6 o'clock for a while. I think if you decide getting up early is important, you don't have to start at 5 all of a sudden. Small improvements.
Yep. Speaking of small improvements, I start thinking about Byron.
Nice.
No, but Byron, like a year or two ago, you talked about how you changed your breakfast eating habits, and you went to have some nuts every morning. And I know you said it made you feel better, hopefully lowered your cholesterol or gave you the good cholesterol or whatever. But, I know that's something that really worked for you. And just a little thing, just changing your breakfast a little bit, eat a little more healthier.
You still making that nut butter, Byron?
No, I just eat, have a little sack, keep nuts in, and then eat out of that.
That's the best way to do it.
No, it was a simple change. You guys are teasing me.
I'm not teasing you.
Well, thank you, Gary. Joe's teasing me. I think just by bringing this up, you're teasing me. But I think I was, well into my mid to late 30s, and I get up in the morning and eat a bowl of sugary cereal, like I have for my entire life, basically. And within an hour and a half, I was hungry again. Cereal's not even real food. It's just like there's nothing there. There's nothing. And so thinking about it, making a few changes, and it's like, okay, what would be a healthy breakfast? And I tried banana, yogurt, and I think most of the time it's just I'm satisfied by a relatively small handful of nuts. Man, that just sounds bad. But just a high protein. And if I'm going to have, there's a decent amount of fat in nuts as well, but it's a change. I don't buy cereal. I don't not that it's really that bad, but it's just, there's nothing for me in that. And then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to resist having a bowl of Lucky Charms or Cocoa Pebbles or whatever it is, Captain Crunch. I could just go downstairs and put an eighth of a cup of mixed nuts and start my day. So, yeah, that's a good way. Doesn't it sound like a good way to start your day, Gary?
Definitely nuts in your hand, and I hope you wash your hands afterwards. But yeah.
So let me ask you this, guys: do you guys eat? Are you guys breakfast guys, or do you start your day off and skip breakfast, or what's going on?
I eat breakfast.
I'm not a breakfast guy. I eat about 11:30.
Wow.
Is my first meal.
And Gary, what are you eating?
Definitely not nuts, but I actually have a protein bar every morning.
Oh, there you go.
I just had one about 5 minutes ago.
Starting the day off strong.
Nice. Well, I did the same thing. I used to eat sugary cereal every day, and And actually, you were one of the ones who, talking about your handful of nuts, I decided to change. And so I can't say I felt any different, but, I hopefully it's a little bit better for me. I don't know, but
you don't look any worse.
Yeah. So there you go.
No, it's just, and it's relatively, just imagine if we were to change this in a different way. Every morning, let's say you drive to work and you swing by and you grab a fast food breakfast sandwich that's got 700 calories in it and a drink with sugar in it. Switch that out for, I guess the bowl of cereal would be a good alternative. Switch that out for the protein bar or a thing of yogurt or something, just those little changes, and it's not going to be anything huge. You can't tell by looking in the mirror in a week, which you've done, but over the course of the year, you're cutting out a ton of calories, a ton of fat that your body's going to have to deal with. I don't know. I like the quote. I like John Maxwell. He's an interesting author, I thought this would be a good one. Real quick, guys, I want to mention an audiobook for anybody who's new to jiu-jitsu. It's your first year of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Here we are on a podcast, and if you like audio content and jiu-jitsu, and you're relatively new to this idea of jiu-jitsu, I think this one hits the nail on the head. Puts the brick in the center of the wall there. It's just me talking to you as if I would give you advice about that first year and what to expect and how to be successful throughout that year. It's 2.5 hours long. It's $11.99, and the money goes and helps supports the podcast. And we've got some great feedback on helping people get started, right? I always feel good when we get that. And if it gets you through that first year and maybe you focused on the techniques that were more fundamental to your game, that's awesome. If you got through your first year and you're still enjoying it the same you did that first month, that's great. And that's really the goal here. So check it out. If you're looking for some audio content for jiu-jitsu, it's an audiobook. The link to the shop is in the show notes, and then from the shop you can find it. Guys, I used to put the link to everything in the show notes, and then when we'd post the show, it would override everybody's pictures. Like the picture of Wayne Tingle would show the book instead. I'm like, this is just annoying. So,
Byron, we know you are money hungry, just trying to make more money.
Yeah, that would be okay, I guess, but this decision to put it all the way in the shop has sold significantly less books. But Byron, I had a step to what you have to do is you have to go through the shop process. And, yeah, Gary.
I have a great way to sell more books. Hey, everybody, with spring break coming up,
okay,
buy your spring break friend a audiobook, The Great Gifts for Spring Break. It's coming up here shortly. So that way, while they're sitting on the beach drinking a pina colada, they can listen to the audiobook and get significantly better at jiu-jitsu.
Man.
Yeah, you need something to listen to while you're driving down to Miami.
Yep. So perfect. Thanks for piggybacking on that, Joe. We got your back, Byron.
Literally.
Man. Well, Gary, I'm excited about this. You also have my back because you said beforehand that you could have an off-the-mat lesson that we could relate to jiu-jitsu.
Yes, I do this week, Byron. And, I've been trying to do some off-the-mat lessons about repoing cars. And, this isn't one particular incident. It's a couple incidents together. But, I've had times where, I have to go pull a car. The debtor is not paying, and I need to get my collateral back. And, back in the day when I did just subprime autos, we made a key through the dealership for every car we financed. So, in the file, we actually had an extra set of keys. So, if we had to go pull it, I could just sneak up there in the middle of the night, get in the vehicle, and hopefully drive it off. But, one time I almost got killed. And what happened was, we were just trying to save a little bit of money. Instead of paying a $250 repo fee, we were trying to get them ourselves. And, that $250, hopefully would save us a little bit of money on our bottom line at the end of the year. So, I'll take one particular incident. But, one time I go out there and it's not the middle of the night, but it's not the best neighborhood. And it's probably the middle of the afternoon. And I go out there, nobody around. The vehicle drops me off a couple houses down. I go sneak into the yard, take the key, open up the vehicle, get in the vehicle, and I go to start the sucker. It doesn't start. And as soon as it doesn't start, no battery, it's just dead there in the middle of the driveway. People come out the front door.
Yeah.
And I think I'm about to die.
What do you wear in this sort of operation, Gary? Like, are you wearing like business clothes, or are you wearing like a night ninja style black clothes, sweatpants?
Just mask? Regular business clothes.
Not a mask?
No mask. I make sure to bring some cards just in case I run into this. But, in a situation like this, when, somebody comes out the door and sees a dude in their car trying to start it, normally they don't even want to see a business card. Yeah.
I can imagine that, Gary. Here's my card, guys.
Yeah. And I mean, today, Kansas being an open carry state, probably, 75 to 80% of the households probably have 4 or 5 guns in the state. And, it was a little scary that I ended, that I did not end my life, with that mistake. But, it makes me think back to jiu-jitsu. I talked about how we were trying to save a little bit of money. And jiu-jitsu, I hear a lot of people say jiu-jitsu is expensive. And, I'll beg to differ, but that's another story. But you need a professional. Trying to do it and save money, trying to do stuff cheap won't work for you. And what I mean by that, instead of going to a real school like BTT of Lake Jackson, or going to Fox Fitness, Wichita, Kansas, Valor Martial Arts, Wichita, Kansas, hire a professional. Don't hire a person who has no clue what they're doing. Like myself, when I went out to repo, I have no repo training. I loved the rush of it, and I would just go out there and try to get them, but I didn't know what I was doing. You hire a professional repo agent, they've got trucks that can pull the cars that aren't running, where I had no other choice. They've got all the tools where they can find people. They got trucks that actually read. They got cameras that actually read license plates that tells you if that's one of your license plates you have in your database to pull the car. And, just like jiu-jitsu, if you have a qualified instructor, you're going to pay a little bit for it, but you're going to learn a lot more. Probably less chance of injury versus trying to learn on YouTube, or some guy who can't even tell you where he got his belt, can't even tell you his lineage. So, don't be cheap. Hire a professional, and that way you won't end up stuck in somebody's yard with 4 or 5 people coming out ready to kill you like I did.
I like it, Gary. I'm glad you didn't die. I have to say that up front because I know there's some animosity. Just kidding. And you make me think about, the professional, and you said something about getting hurt or something like that. That made me just think, is it safer to train at a gym with better quality instruction? Obviously, the instruction is better, but could it also be safer?
I think so.
That's interesting.
I mean, I think of going back, let's say I first started like we did with John Castillo, versus me and you just got in, just started training, at the park and watching YouTube videos. I will tell you one thing, my instructor would always be like, hey, be careful, watch out. You're doing something crazy. Our instructor would go around with it and watch. He wasn't big into rolling. He would always watch and, make sure everybody was safe. But I could tell you, if he wasn't watching, I would amp up, trying to get a tap. I would amp up my intensity. And I could just see if Byron and I just went to the park, I'd be like a wounded cougar, looking to pounce on Byron's back, literally.
Well, I'll add one thing. Remember we had a quote a couple weeks ago. What was it? Just because you're old doesn't necessarily mean you're wise. I mean, that wasn't the quote, but that was the point, right?
I wasn't that old at that time, though.
Yeah, a little older now. Yeah, remember that show we did when we were younger? Anyway, don't mistake the cost of the gym and the financial success of the teacher, that doesn't necessarily reflect the quality. That might reflect just a good salesman and a guy that put a school in the right location and stuff. So if you're in a big city and you've got several options, go try them all out, and don't just assume that the cheapest one is going to be the worst or that the most expensive one's going to be the best. Try them all out. Ask some of the other students what they think about training there, and make a decision based on what you see is right for you.
That's a great point, Joe. And to help Byron out again, he also talks about that in his audiobook, Your First Year in BJJ, that makes great spring break presents.
Absolutely.
Yes. Man, you guys are on it today. We have this interview with Wayne Tingle coming up. We have a question of the week I'm excited to talk about. And just before we even do this, we're going to talk about the seminar on March 7th, just south of Houston, Lake Jackson. This is days away from when this airs. So wanted to talk about that. It's going to be me and my coach, Jake Fox, will be teaching a class at Joe's school in Lake Jackson. So come meet Joe at the seminar. and yeah, it's going to be great. But we'll talk about that after the interview. So I'm excited to bring Wayne Tingle to the BjjBrick Podcast. All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Wayne Tingle to the BjjBrick Podcast. Wayne, welcome to the podcast.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So am I. Talking with you a little bit before we get recording here, and I know we're going to have a great time. I'm going to learn a lot. Tell us a little bit about where you are and what brought you there.
So I live and work in Central America, in Nicaragua, particularly up in the northern part in the mountains of Matagalpa. It's a very agricultural, very rural style community. And, my wife and I founded an organization called Enrich Missions, and we work with public school kids in Nicaragua to help them graduate. There's about a 70% dropout rate before you reach 6th grade in the area that we work in. And we're trying to kill that statistic. We believe very deeply in the power of education, and we want to help kids get an education, in an opportunity where they probably wouldn't have it.
Wow. So 70% of kids drop out before 6th grade. What are they doing?
Yeah,
What's going on there?
Right. Well, the poverty level is incredibly deep in Nicaragua. It's the second most impoverished nation on our half of the planet. And the further you get away from capital cities, it gets even more impoverished. So what happens is you end up with parents who are making about, maybe about $2 a day. And this has been generational. So now these parents only have a 2nd or a 3rd grade education. I think on average, a man has a 3rd grade education. On average, a woman has a 2nd grade education. So the time has come. Their kid has gotten to be 7, 8 years old. And what happens is they become really good at picking. And coffee is grown all around here. We're in the coffee belt. And women and children pick coffee better than men because they're more gentle with the plants. So these kids will become coffee pickers or bean pickers, and they'll be able to bring money into the home. Nicaragua, with its poverty, doesn't have a lot of resources for schooling. So the government doesn't really pump a lot of money into the school, which means that things like uniforms, books, pencils, paper, backpacks, all of that stuff is a cost to the parents. And when you're only making a couple of dollars a day, you have to make the choice between spending money for your kid to go to school or your kids making money and bringing that money into the household. It's not a lot of money that the kids would make, but it's better than where you were. Man, that is an incredibly, incredibly difficult decision. And I would never fault anybody for having to make that decision. What we do is we try to come in and we try to fill that gap that poverty creates. And I'll sit down with the parents and I'll explain our program. I'll tell them about the nutrition program. We give kids a hot lunch. We have enrichment classes like Jiu-Jitsu, art, music, ballet, tutoring programs. We do a special service, all of that kind of stuff. So I sit down with the parents and I'll explain all this. And I say, listen, the only commitment that I'm really looking for you is that you actually send your kid to school on a regular basis. They need to make good grades and they need to have good attendance. And I'll handle everything else from there. And most of the time, parents are very, very responsive.
Wow, that's a tough spot for any family to be. I imagine it's even like you said, the parents have a very limited amount of education themselves, so maybe they don't fully understand the value that what it could do to somebody or bring to them in their life. But really, when your choice is between we need money to eat or to survive, and you can make money too and help this family, what a tough spot to be in. Versus, do any kids do a little bit of both? Like, can you go to, instead of drop out completely, can some kids go to school like a little bit? Is that a thing, or is it just one or the other?
No, it's a sliding scale.
Okay.
So what we found is that the younger the kid is, the more apt they are to go to school every day. The younger the kid enters the program, for us, the enrichment program, the more apt they are to go to school every day. The older the kid, they also have a Saturday option where you'll go to school for 6 to 8 hours. I think normally school year is about 2.5, 3 hours a day. So you can go to school for 6 to 8 hours on a Saturday. Those kids are called cycle kids, and they're taking 2 grades at a time. So if you failed out of 5th grade or you failed out of 4th grade, you can take 4th and 5th grade in 1 year and be able to graduate and catch up with your friends. The challenge with that, before our program came into being, I remember hearing about that, and I thought, man, if you weren't able to pass 4th grade on a daily basis, how on earth are you going to pass it going once a week? But these days, we're able to get those kids into our tutoring program. We bring local college kids in from the main part of the city. We'll drive them out to these barrios that we work in, and several times a week, and they'll be able to sit down and go over one-on-one attention with whatever they're having a problem with, whether it's math or language or something like that. So we've had incredible success. Seeing kids' grades go up, seeing retention rate for not dropping out, and having kids graduate 6th grade and then move on to high school. Here we have primary and secondary, so they graduate 6th grade. If you graduate 6th grade here, statistically, it skyrockets for you to go on to secondary. And then, we also have a scholarship program for kids to go to college and that kind of stuff.
I didn't really get it out of you. How'd you end up in Nicaragua?
Oh, man. So, it's an interesting story because I didn't really grow up in the church. I'm a missionary here, and I'm a pastor these days. But I didn't grow up in the church, and I didn't grow up, honestly, I didn't really grow up valuing education that much. I went to high school, and I did okay, but I didn't particularly care, and I wasn't geared to go to college or anything like that. So I ended up being a contractor doing construction, which I still do and I still love. And that's what I was doing for when I met my wife and we had gotten married. And we started going to a church, and the church said, hey, we're going to do a mission trip to Nicaragua. And it's going to be a work-based trip. We're doing construction. And the pastor came and said, Wayne, will you come down? Because there's not a lot of people who know construction that are coming on this trip, and it's work-based, and I think you'd be a great fit. And I said, yeah, of course, man. I'd be happy to come down. So we went down, and here to Nicaragua, we actually worked in the capital with another organization. And they were working on building a school. They had this big plot of land, and they had just built this big security wall around it. And they needed to put razor wire on it. So me and my friend, Mike Roberts, who was a welder at the time, we worked on putting this razor wire all around this wall. We did it for, 4 or 5 days. Got cut up real bad. But by the end of it, I was kind of standing near my pastor and the founder of the organization that we were working with. And he was saying something along the lines of, I really need somebody to come down as a missionary who knows how to run construction projects. And I thought in my mind, I was like, hey, I know how to run construction projects. So a little bit later, we had gotten out into the community, and I met adults who couldn't read or write. And let me tell you, man, growing up in the suburbs of Florida, I had never met an adult in my life who couldn't read or write. So it impacted me in a way that I really thought, man, I need to be here helping people get an education in Nicaragua, getting this opportunity that I didn't particularly care about. But when I saw what the lack of opportunity, suddenly education made a huge difference, and I really began to value it more.
Yeah, you saying that hadn't met an adult that couldn't read or write. I don't know if I have. And that's really a crazy statement as far as I can't comprehend my life without being able to read something. and write something. I don't know how I would function in normal society. Like I guess if you drop me off in Nicaragua, I basically can't read or write the street signs. I would have a very difficult time there. Is that?
Yeah, I think it would be very similar. What had happened is, my wife and I, we were sitting down at a clinic. We were like the last day of this trip. We had to sit down and talk with people one-on-one. They had to write their name on pieces of paper or something before they went in to see this little clinic space. So it was triage. We were just taking height, weight, name, that kind of stuff. And I knew, growing up in Florida, I knew a little bit of Spanish, enough to be able to ask people what their name was. I certainly wasn't conversational. So, I remember I was sitting there and I was doing pretty good. I was just like most things I do in life. I do pretty well without trying too hard. So I was feeling pretty proud of myself. And then this lady sits down and I was like, "Hey, ¿cuál es su nombre?" And she didn't say anything. Or she said their name and I could not understand what she was saying. It was such a complicated name. And I said, "Well, I don't really understand. Can you write it down?" So I didn't really know how to say that. So I took the pen and I made that motion in the air. You know how we do, we don't really speak the language. We start using hand motions.
Yeah.
And I said, and I pushed the paper over and I gave her the pen and she doesn't do anything. She's got her hands in her lap. She's looking down. And I was like, no, like this. So I was like speaking louder in English and, making more exaggerated motions with my hand, thinking that maybe she just didn't understand. I did this one more time, louder. I like
that's what always happens. The volume goes up. Like that's the problem. Louder.
Right. And then, a friend of mine who was bilingual came over. Her name was Elisa.
Okay.
And she said, "Hey, this woman can't write her name, And in one moment, everything in my being just switched, and I was so embarrassed, man. I felt terrible for my insensitivity. Then I could just feel the embarrassment coming off of her in waves of the situation that I had created, and man, I remember that day like a movie. That's when something really clicked inside of my spirit.
Yeah.
That education does make a difference, and what I was seeing was a lack of opportunity. And I could do something about that.
Wow. That's when you said somebody couldn't read or write, I was assuming some level of being able to, like, you could say this person can't read or write. I would still assume they could probably write their name. Like and then they could navigate street signs enough to be safe. Like I couldn't, is there a different, I guess, levels or categories to literacy as far as not being able to even write your own name on a piece of paper? That sounds like a terrible struggle to have to, every time something like that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's deep. And it's heartbreaking, it's heartbreaking to see this, that is definitely a place where the system has failed, So anyway, that's when we decided that we needed to be missionaries and that we had something to offer. And
how long ago was that?
We really wanted to. That was, let's see, we've been missionaries for 10 years. So that was about a year before we actually became missionaries. So 11 years ago.
Okay. So we also have you on here. I do want to talk a little bit about jiu-jitsu as well. What's your jiu-jitsu story? Where do you start jiu-jitsu? Where are you currently with your jiu-jitsu journey?
Yeah. So let me just start by saying I love jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu has got a ton of parallels for leadership in my life and how I train people and how I deal with people. So I didn't always do jiu-jitsu, though. In fact, for a long time, I'd never even heard of jiu-jitsu. But I have always been kind of, I want to take care of my body. I've been healthy, We have a core belief in our family and in my organization that if we have a healthy body, we're going to live a long life. And I want to be able to help people as long as possible. So I want to have a healthy body. So for me, that meant that I eat well and I go to the gym and I work out and I lift weights. And I've been doing that for a long time. I remember I hit a point where I could bench press about 300 pounds and with somebody spotting me. Wow. And I remember it kind of clicked in me that day that, man, this is super boring. This is not interesting at all for me anymore. So, when I could do sets between 220 and 250, I was doing the eating thing. I was eating a ton of protein. I was pretty big as a person. I'm already 6'1", 6'2". I probably weighed 240, mostly muscle. You know what I mean? So I was a pretty big guy. I was walking around this small town in Matagalpa. I'm wearing I was doing the whole thing, wearing shirts that are too small for me, I got a giant beard. I'm white. I'm 6 feet tall. I was peculiar, walking around town in Latin America. So anyway, I hit that 300-pound mark, and I was like, oh, this is, I feel like I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. But I have a core belief that says I want to live a long time. I want to live a healthy lifestyle. So I have to figure out something. It's a conviction and motivates my behavior. So I'm working on that, and I'm thinking, and lo and behold, there's a sign over the road that says Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, I don't even know what Jiu-Jitsu is. And it said something like first class free. It's all in Spanish. First class free. Come try it out, something like that. So I'm driving there with my wife. I said, I think I'm going to try that. I'm so tired of lifting weights. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm probably going to be good at any martial art that I do. I'll try it out. If it's not a great workout, I'll just try something else. She's like, okay. My wife has always been an encourager for my crazy ideas. So I go in there. Oh man, this was a hard day for me. So I go in there, and this is the first time I met Coach Abraham Rosales Chavarria, who comes out of the EDJ network in California. He's a Canadian, so he speaks English, which is good for me, because a lot of these concepts and stuff don't translate well to Spanish if you didn't grow up speaking Spanish. So, it's been a real benefit for me. So he says, hey, here, you can try my gi. I didn't have a gi. I didn't have anything, man. I just walked in there with shorts and a T-shirt. He says, you put on this gi, and we'll do some warm-ups, we'll do some stretching, and then I'll kind of give you an idea what rolling is like. And, man, that guy manipulated me for an hour. I couldn't do anything. Bro, I mean, he only weighs 160, 170, maybe 180 if he's got a little weight on him. I could bench press this guy, but I could not do anything against him. And after an hour, I had to lay on the mat for 30 minutes just to recover before I could pick up my phone to call my wife to drive me home so I could walk home. And I thought, wow, this is a workout. I thought I had been working out, and I thought I was in good shape. And then I hit jiu-jitsu, and they hit me back like a train. I thought this is definitely something that I could see myself doing. And I've done it just about every day since then. I go to jiu-jitsu 5 times a week. I go to early morning classes. The only time I don't really get a great chance to do it is when I'm traveling, because when I'm traveling, I'm doing these speaking engagements and I'm doing morning meetings, and so for a couple of months out of the year, I have to take a break. But for about 10 months out of the year, maybe 11 months out of the year, I'm doing it every day for an hour a day.
I think that's the kind of the eye-opening experience walking in here. Sizing somebody up. Okay, this guy's about 170 pounds. That's not me. I'm way stronger than this guy. And then getting that reality is okay, my size up of this person was completely wrong. It's an interesting experience, because the only difference was that one person knew jiu-jitsu and the other one didn't.
Sure.
And
yeah, definitely.
It's just it's a game changer. It's you can't look at me and tell me if I could be good at playing soccer or tennis. You can't look at somebody and tell. But for some reason, we think we can with martial arts,
right?
and there is some ability to do that, I suppose. But in general, it's really hard to tell if somebody's going to be a capable martial artist just by looking at them.
That's definitely true. And it's really given me more respect for people that I see just in the street. Because, I used to, I was a big guy. I was also kind of cocky. And I was like, which is kind of, I know it sounds weird to say as a Christian and a pastor that I would be cocky because I was huge walking around. But jiu-jitsu has taught me that I was that. So, now that I've been rolling and I've been humbled a lot, I'm way more, probably a little more respectful for people that I meet in the street with. Because, you never really understand what people know or how good they are at it.
Yeah, but I would say this also to add that, you're in a relatively small city.
Yeah.
The odds are if somebody didn't know jiu-jitsu, you probably know them as well. So
that's probably true.
So what is you go to the early classes, how many people are there? What's the training like there?
So I used to, I go to the early classes now because that's what fits my schedule. So What I do these days are privates 5 days a week.
Okay.
So I roll directly with Coach Abraham, and they're hard rolls. We go to war every day. which has been great for me and been great for my stamina. Well, when I first started, I would do classes, and I really loved the community aspect of it. I love rolling with other people, but for my schedule, I have to be done, working out by 9 o'clock, between 8 and 9 o'clock. So I just can't go at night, and I can't do all the community jiu-jitsu stuff. But I roll every day. I roll hard. Abraham's a brown belt. So, every once in a while, I'll get a good Kimura on him. And although a lot of times I think he gives it to me. But, we roll hard every day from the feet. And it's just it's a hard thing for me.
Yeah. You mentioned that you didn't have a gi when you first started, obviously, but are you training in the gi now, or is it mostly no gi?
So I did no gi for about a year. As soon as we started doing privates, I was like, awesome, no more gi, right? And so we started doing no gi. And it's so hot here in Nicaragua that no gi was really, for my purposes, I'm not particularly trying to become awesome at jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to live a healthy lifestyle. So no gi fulfilled that for me. And I got pretty good, doing no gi, starting in a clinch, stepping into people, getting ankle picks and throwing them down, and all of that kind of stuff I really enjoyed doing. Then, let me tell you this, we had an in-house tournament, the first one ever, and it was going to be gi-only tournament. And coach is like, yeah, you should definitely come out, in-house tournament. My professor's going to come afterwards. We're going to do belt ups, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't really do much in a gi. And this was probably a week before the tournament. He's like, bring your gi back out. We'll do some training. It'll be great. And so I put the gi on, and I forgot how heavy that gi is when you're sweating and it's hot. And it was like, oh, my gosh. So I put the gi back on, and I worked out in it for, my 4 or 5 classes for the week. And I went into the competition, and I got submitted quickly by the guys who had been working the gi for the entire year. Just those collar chokes and everything. I had no idea how to respond to that. So since then, I have been doing gi work nearly every day, and my collar chokes have gotten better, and my grips and everything. So nowadays, I do gi work 3 times a week and no gi 2 times a week, but I did go a long time doing just no gi.
You have an interesting response that not everybody has, but sometimes somebody will go from no gi to gi, or it's one or the other, and it won't go real well, and they'll have they'll be repulsed from that, like, oh, I hate the gi now. And instead, you kind of flipped it on its head and said, I need more of this. This is where I had a tough time, and that's a good way to approach that, because it just opens up your training. It like I always just say, if you're able to train, go train regardless of what's going on. And you're limited with your time, but I always feel like if this is a no gi night and you prefer the gi and you can't go train. And you can go train. You just go train. It doesn't really matter.
I think showing up is 80% of the work, isn't it? So in these days, every once in a while, somebody will want to try out jiu-jitsu, and coach will ask if he can just step into our privates and if I'll work with him. And I see those guys going through the same thing I went through on day one, just gassing out so fast. They're using every muscle in their body. I got them in a guard, and I'm just sitting there, and they're using every muscle in their body trying to escape, and they get that deep panting, and you could just tell they're gassing out. And I'm thinking, man, I've come a long way, and man, I'm really happy to help this person get on that journey as well. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, that's a thing you're going to experience over and over again with people that come in. I think part of it is, like you experience, they think they're going to be good at it, and so they think that, like, oh, of course, like, effort and being good are going to match equally. But the other thing is, some people, and not everybody, their body has a pretty intense reaction to somebody attacking them. Like, okay, he's trying to choke me, and now, like, if you try to choke me, I'm going to be defending it the best I can, but at no point in time am I actually scared of the choke. I'm not going to. You're not going to kill me. I'm not going to get hurt from this. I'm not, like, all those fears that are, like, deep inside. Like, none of those are even on. If once you've done just for even a little while, it's like, I got to do the choke. I got to do this and do that, and maybe I'll get out. And it happens or it doesn't happen. But I think when you're brand new, that fear, it could be overwhelming, and like, this guy's trying to choke me, and you can't calm that down. Yeah, and it's just like your adrenaline kicks in even more, and then that you gasp
I'm gonna die at this first class.
you die because your body, or you get tired because your body is afraid it's going to die, while you're just training with somebody who's perfectly friendly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I remember ever since my kids were little, you know, we've always kind of said in my house, you know, before even jiu-jitsu or anything, if you panic, you die. So I've always been trying to instill this idea that if, you know, if somebody's following them and they panic and they start running, or if they're drowning and they start panicking, or if something bad is happening and they start panicking, that's the wrong way to go. You need to make yourself calm and think through things rationally. But, you know, you don't really understand a lesson until you have to live it out. And the first time that somebody wrapped their arm around my neck and I could feel the blood stop going to my head, yeah, man, it's tough to fight that panic down. It's a lesson that I had to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of dealing with yourself when you panic is, and it could be anything. It could be an interview at work or for a job. It could be, you know, a difficult conversation, or maybe you have to give a speech somewhere. When you start to panic, almost the dumber part of your brain has taken over, and the simple act of just taking a deep breath or two will bring in your more advanced brain, and your frontal lobe comes back to, and you're actually who you are, and you could think and you could solve problems much more effectively than just be scared of them. And I'm a fan of take a deep breath and then see what you have going on. In jiu-jitsu, if you can't take a deep breath, you got somebody crushing you, and that's a different thing. But so you mentioned you have kids. Are they training, or what's going on?
So they both of them do. So I have a younger daughter, 13 years old, and I have an older daughter, 17 years old, who's just about to go off to college. So she's kind of migrating out of our academy, and we're trying to figure out if she's going to train when she goes to college and that kind of stuff. But yeah, both of my kids have been training for, Allison's been training for as long as I have. I think she started right after I started, because as a family value of being healthy, I require my kids to exercise outside of like school PE. So they have to do something. They have to be involved in some sort of physical activity. Emily was doing Taekwondo for a long time. And you know, after doing jiu-jitsu and participating a little bit in Taekwondo, I could see the vast difference in what it takes from your body, you know, and how hard jiu-jitsu was for me anyway. So she switched over to jiu-jitsu. She loves jiu-jitsu, man, and she has been killing it. You know, in her class, she's like the mat enforcer in her class these days. So, yeah, it's a family thing.
Cool. Have you? I guess what are your plans as far as jiu-jitsu in the future for yourself? And you just, as of now, just continue on with your morning classes and yeah. Okay, cool.
So I've never, you know, tried to make a career out of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a coach. The only time that I really get into jiu-jitsu more than just training and trying to get my heart rate up, these days I can get my heart rate up to about 180. You know, I'm 40 years old. I weigh about 220 pounds, depending on what my wife's been cooking lately. And so for me to be able to get my heart rate up to 180 and sustain is pretty good. So I feel like jiu-jitsu is doing for me what I want it to be doing. But I'd mentioned before, we do these enrichment classes where kids in the neighborhood can take art, music, ballet, or jiu-jitsu. And that was actually the first enrichment class that we ever launched. And I remember I was sitting with Coach Abraham at the end of a class, and I'm just trying to recover, you know. And I said, you know, hey, what would you think about bringing kids from the barrio that we work in over to your academy and having a jiu-jitsu class for underprivileged kids? And he says, man, let me show you something. So he goes up to his office, and he's been a Christian for a long time. He's got a Bible, and he opens it up. He says, I wrote this down years ago when I was first starting jiu-jitsu. And he had written down that he wants to use jiu-jitsu to help underprivileged kids. I was like, bro, I've got a ton of underprivileged kids. You got jiu-jitsu. Let's put all this together. So jiu-jitsu was the first enrichment class that we ever launched. And we would drive kids from the neighborhood all the way over to the academy in town, and we bought all their gis. It was no cost to the parents or anything like that. So since then, particularly since I belted up to blue, I feel, a little more confident about, my skills. I stay for my private class is right before the kids class, before the enrichment class. So I'll stay for the enrichment class and I'll help kids with their technique. And I'll even stay after their class is over for another 15 minutes. And I'll say, listen, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy. Abraham's wrapping stuff up, and I'll say, we can go over some details of whatever it is that you're messing up. And it's a way for me to be able to serve kids on a one-on-one basis.
Wow. And so do you have any examples of how it's maybe helped a kid be motivated in school differently, or really turn around in confidence or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. We got, several examples of kids that would be, being bullied. And, where we are, it's incredibly, I keep saying it over and over, incredibly impoverished. And that's true. But what you have in that kind of atmosphere is a bunch of kids that are almost street kids. They have a place to sleep at night, but they're not there during the day. They don't ever really go home if they can avoid it. So we've given them a place to come for at least an hour. These kids who didn't really know each other that well have now developed a little family of jiu-jiteros, that are all working together, and they're really encouraging to one another. We have a whole thing that they speak out about how important they are, how valued they are, how respectful they are, how strong they are. So we reinforce, psychiatrists and the Bible both say that the words that you speak are incredibly important. So just being able to speak this kind of life over kids has been dramatically affected their attitude, the discipline that they have now, and all of their grades have gone up. I could say 100% of their grades have gone up. We had one situation with this girl who takes jiu-jitsu. We're about 50-50 girls and boys. So this girl that was taking jiu-jitsu says, man, she went to Ronald and Gloria, who are my staff members. And she said, I think it's time for me to leave home. I want to run away from home. This girl's like 14 years old. I want to run away from home, and I want to look for a man to maintain me. Yo estoy buscando un hombre para mantenerme. It's like I need to find a sugar daddy. And Gloria, who's 20 some odd years old, I think she's 23 or 24, graduated bachelor's degree in college. She's smart. She carries herself well. She's an amazing role model for these girls. She said, listen, if you run away from home and drop out of school, you're going to get kicked out of jiu-jitsu. You can't stay in this program and make those decisions with your life. So you're going to have to make a different decision. That girl did not run away from home. She's still in school, and she's still in jiu-jitsu. That's a huge win, man. Yeah. That's a huge win. That would have been a huge personal, just a terrible idea. That would have been a life-changing, terrible idea for her. And now, instead of doing that, finding some 30 to 40-year-old man to shack up with, she's in school. She's getting educated. She's on a track to go to college. I mean, everything about her life is different because of that.
And she's also learning a skill that could potentially help her if she ends up in trouble someday.
Yeah, definitely. And, jiu-jitsu, well, I think for the common person that attends jiu-jitsu, they don't really view it as an opportunity to advance their life as a career. It's mostly just probably like me, where I go work out. I like the familial aspect. It's fun. But I'm not trying to make money at jiu-jitsu. But we got kids now that have been rolling for, about over a year. And they're we just had a couple of kids belt up to blue, and they're like, man, I could go compete somewhere. I could get sponsored and make money. I could become a coach. Yeah, this feels like a lifestyle that I want to be a part of. These kids are coming up with vision for their lives, when before their only vision was kind of growing up in the same barrio and going and picking, and then having their kids in the same barrio and just completing the cycle.
Wow. Do you think that I guess this is a total topic change, is the ability to pick coffee beans, is that going to stay there, or will it be somehow, will machines do that, or will somebody always be hand picking it?
There's in our area, there's 12, I want to say there's 12. Oh man, I want to make sure I get this number right because you're recording it.
That's about 12, you could say.
Yeah, there's 12,000 kids under the age of 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, our program we got about 120 kids that eat on a regular basis. We have 60 kids in enrichment programs. I want to say 13 to 15 of them are in jiu-jitsu. So, we're actually, the dent that we're making is deep, but it's small. We're still a pretty young ministry. We're planting more enrichment centers and that kind of stuff. So there will always be a labor force. Is that what you're asking? Will there be a labor force? There will always be a labor force of kids.
Could something happen to take away the need for the kids to, like a farmer here in the United States is doing the work that, 100 farmers would have done 100 years ago. Like, he's got a big tractor and he's able to plow an incredible amount of field. One person. Could that type of a thing happen to where even the job that they currently could do could go away, and it could be automated or done in a cheaper way that doesn't involve human labor?
Well,
I guess human labor there is so low it would be.
Now you're hitting the nail on the head right there. The labor is so cheap that it doesn't make sense to buy a tractor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it makes so much more sense to hire kids or hire people. Coffee is one of the last few agricultural products that you cannot harvest with a machine.
Okay.
Or you'll damage the plants. When you pick a coffee bean, they call it it's a cherry when it's on the bush, but it has a little stem that's attached to the branch. You have to pick the cherry without picking the stem. And it's so fragile that, women and children make the best because their fingers are a little more nimble. And if you pick that stem, then the bean won't grow in the following year. So that you have to really focus on picking the cherry, leaving the stem. There's no machine that can do that.
Okay, man. Are you a coffee drinker?
I am. I drink it a lot. In fact, we bring coffee into the U.S. quite a bit. I use it as gifts for donors and that kind of stuff. And I I tell people all the time, because my friend, I know people that grow coffee, so they're growing coffee and roasting it, and then they just give it to me, and we give it away to other people. But it's it's all organic, fresh roasted stuff. And I tell people all the time, this might be the best coffee you've ever drank in your life. And a lot of them come back and say, man, that coffee was amazing.
Tell me a little bit about Enrich Missions, or what you're doing. There's you can go to enrichmissions.org. Is that correct?
Yeah. So enrichmissions.org is our website. You can find us in Enrich Missions on Facebook. We pump a lot of media out there. And all of the stuff that I'm talking about with these enrichment classes with art, music, ballet, jiu-jitsu, we run all of that through a sponsorship program. So you can sponsor a kid at $45 a month. And that helps pay for all of our day-to-day costs of the nutrition, the tutoring, the new shoes that they need, the new uniforms they need, backpacks, books, paper, all of that kind of stuff. So we work really hard to fill that gap that poverty creates in the family. And we do that because we have people sponsoring kids, which gives us the funds to be able to buy the things that they need. And then when they take the classes, we monitor their grades very closely. We know their families. It's a kind of an intimate form of ministry. We know their families, and when their grades slip, if they get out of honor roll level grades, they're automatically pumped into the tutoring program to get their grades back up. Their attendance has to be high. So, we're kind of involved in their day-to-day lives once they're in an enrichment class.
And so you said you do a lot of speaking and a lot of training as well, as far as with missions. Describe that a little bit.
So, I've been a missionary for 10 years. I went through a great training program that doesn't really exist anymore. And there's about a 78% failure rate among missionaries within their first 18 months. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One is lack of fundraising. They just don't really understand how to fundraise. Two is lack of project development. They don't understand how to do ministry. They don't understand how to make projects. And three is a lack of the ability to culturally adapt to a new country. You refuse to learn the language. All of your friends are the other white people that live in there, around you, all of that kind of stuff. So we train missionaries. We have a missionary training program that really focuses heavily on the practical aspects of being a missionary, from public speaking to fundraising to conflict resolution, building your personal skills, all of that kind of stuff, soft skills. And we found it to be pretty successful. I'm pretty passionate about helping missionaries equip to be able to go out and do the job that they're doing well. What I find a lot of is people who are super passionate, and they definitely have a heart to serve and do something different, or go somewhere different and do that. They just have absolutely no idea of how to do it. Every other industry, we get trained. I go to jiu-jitsu training every day. I can't imagine having to step into a local competition with absolutely no training and being like, look at me, I'm a jiu-jitero. But missionaries do it every day. They step into the field, they go to another country, they look at me, I'm a missionary, and they just get beat, just like anybody else who had never practiced jiu-jitsu would get beat. So we're trying to work hard against that.
You kind of got at a couple of them, but what do you do differently, or what's the main thing you do with somebody to get them to where they can get past that, I guess, the 18-month point?
Yeah. So we make them, we teach project development. So we teach critical path project development, and we teach a bit of Scrum project development, which most people don't really even know what that is, much less how to utilize that for ministry or developing projects. We teach people how to fundraise. We teach them all the aspects. Fundraising is a spiritual discipline, just like prayer or communion or anything like that. So we teach people how to fundraise, and then I make them do some fundraising as practice. I give them some kind of like I have friends that will support them if they ask. So I'll say, listen, I want you to call this person. I want you to give them your pitch. I want you to tell them about what you're doing. I want you to ask them to support you. I want you to ask them to support you on a monthly basis and then see what happens. So a lot of people have to get through that fear of asking people to support what they're doing. We also do a lot of interpersonal skills. So we start out with things like core beliefs. A lot of people don't have any core beliefs, and they're just led by their emotions. They don't have any constant conviction that motivates their behavior. So we teach them what core beliefs are, and we make them start picking out some core beliefs for their own life. We teach them about conflict resolution. We teach them about how to culturally adapt to a new country, which I think a lot of people skip that process as missionaries. It's super important. We have got a couple of missionaries starting here now, actually in March, and they're going to start in language school. And for us, it's a big part of cultural adaptation. If you're going to work for me, you have to speak Spanish in Nicaragua. You can't be a missionary and not speak Spanish. So I think learning the language is a huge part of being a missionary. It's that kind of stuff. It's not a lot of spiritual disciplines. My assumption is that your pastor is already taking care of your spiritual disciplines. I'll assess that while you're doing your training, and I'll give you a lot of counseling and coaching on the way through.
If a big part of that, it seemed like, was becoming, like getting involved with the culture, becoming part of that. And I'm just thinking, if somebody was going through your process and they do jiu-jitsu, like how simple would it be to help, like, get new friends within the community or whatever, to start also doing jiu-jitsu there? Like that's a very simple, like.
Oh man, I recommend it personally because as a core belief of also trying to stay healthy, we want our missionaries to also live a healthy lifestyle. That's a core belief we have as an organization, which means that I don't want to work you to death. A lot of missions organizations will just work you until you're completely burned out and you cannot do any more work. So we avoid that like the plague. I want to make sure that you're eating correctly. A lot of missionaries move to the field and they either already have really unhealthy eating habits or they just develop unhealthy eating habits because it's a whole new menu for them. And I want to make sure that you're exercising regularly. And for us, that means jiu-jitsu. If you want to do something else, you can do Zumba or Taekwondo or walk every day. I don't really care as long as you're developing that out. I would recommend jiu-jitsu because of the familial aspect of it. You're going to step into an academy full of people that already like you. They're already for you. They're already impressed that you're taking this first step on your jiu-jitsu journey, and they want to help you with it. And I got to tell you, man, that's a mindset that we're supposed to have in the church. People come into the church, we're supposed to welcome them with open arms and love them. And what we end up doing is we put a microscope on their lives, and we say, well, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. I think jiu-jitsu's got it right when they say, listen, we want you to come as you are. You're going to change along in this journey, in this process, but let's just get started with some love. We're going to love you right now, and we're going to change together. I think the church has got that wrong in a lot of ways, and I wish that the church was a little closer to the culture of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. Wish that the church was a little bit closer to the culture of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I agree.
Ask me. I don't really know what to say to that.
I'm just neither do I. Okay.
But I do teach it. I do teach that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when I go and speak at churches, I do get a lot of invitations to come speak at churches and talk about our mission training program, because that's where most of our missionaries come out of the local church, and most churches do not have a missionary training program. So they want to utilize ours, which is great. I'm thrilled to be able to teach people about missions. But I always tend to refer back to jiu-jitsu and talk about the first time I got choked and I felt that panic come up. That's very similar to asking somebody for money for the first time. When you sit down and you're trying to fundraise, you get panicky because money's weird, man. Money's a weird topic to talk about. Or the way that, the jiu-jitsu is such a familial aspect to it. A lot of missionaries will jump out into the field in the world and they will have no support system. They're not part of a team. Their church is way back in the United States. There's no familial aspect to it. I think that's a big reason that people get burned out and they leave within the first 18 months or so.
Yeah.
We need that. Here at Enrich Missions, we do have a familiar aspect. I have a staff of Nicaraguans. My wife and I live here in Nicaragua. If you come and work for me, you're going to be around me pretty frequently because we're going to be part of your family. And we're going to love you like that, And I think that a lot of times missionaries are missing out on
that. It sounds like you could kind of break it down in different categories. Like somebody might be really good about teaching the ideas that are core to the mission, and but they might suffer. They might have kind of a weak area of asking for money or raising money or having a connection with the culture or being able to even speak the language, or maybe they have a hard time figuring out, what to eat or any it's the same. It's similar in jiu-jitsu. Like I could have, a tough time passing the guard, but I feel really comfortable from my guard, or it's not like
absolutely
you're bad at it. You just need to look at what categories you're weak in and get those up to speed.
Yeah, definitely. I love side control, especially working from nogi for so long. Side control is my go-to. I can step into a guard. I can knee slice most of the time. I can get into side control pretty easily with just about anybody in my academy because I'm very comfortable in it. I'm very, very comfortable in it. But if you ask me to pull guard, if you ask me to hold somebody in my guard and start working a submission, suddenly I'm all thumbs, man. I can't get my feet to do the things I want them to do just because I don't practice it enough. It's not that I'm terrible about it or that I don't want to do it. It's just a thing that I'm just weak in and I need to work on it. And I think part of what we don't like to do is work hard. You know what I mean? I think jiu-jitsu kind of kicks that out of you. Because you step in as a white belt, everything's hard work, and you realize that you really start falling in love with the process. The process is so much more important than the destination, and I think that's so true on so many parts of our lives, particularly in missions. The process is more important than the destination. The process of becoming a leader is more important than the day that you actually realize you are a leader. The process of jiu-jitsu, when does the process really end? You have to fall in love with the process in order to be successful. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it is the process for jiu-jitsu. I don't know some people have a goal of, this tournament in 6 months, and then they put their eyes on that target. But that time comes and goes.
Sure.
I guess you could quit jiu-jitsu at the time, and that was your jiu-jitsu process. But most people keep going, and it's just that's part of the process. Ultimately, it's not the end. It's not the goal.
And the process is full of these hallelujah moments, right, where the skies open up and angels sing over you. But without the process, who gets this really easily and really naturally is gamers. Gamers understand the process. They understand there's a grind in order to level up. There's some part of this game where you got to get into a dungeon and hit a whole bunch of low-level characters in order to get your experience up, in order to level up to the next thing. Gamers automatically understand the process and the grind. But if you didn't grow up gaming or anything like that, then suddenly the process and the grind feels like something terrible. You don't want to have to go through all that. But jiu-jitsu really kind of kicks that whole aspect out of you. It makes you fall in love with the process.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think that's one indicator whether someone's going to ultimately stick with it or not. If you could have a kind of a bad day on the mats, and still think, that's pretty fun. You're going to be doing this as long as you can. But if you have a bad day in the mats and it just ruins the rest of your day and you're upset about it, like that happens too. But what normally happens to you when you don't perform well in the mats or when your plan doesn't go well, if you're able to still enjoy the process, if you get psych control on me and it was like a pretty miserable experience and you're crushing me and then you catch me with a Kimura or something, like if that process, although it was rather uncomfortable physically and it didn't go so well for me, if I can think that's a pretty good roll, that person's going to stick around. If you have that total negative reaction to it, it's going to be harder for you to come back. It's going to be harder for me to look at, hey, let's roll another round. I'm going to try to find somebody who doesn't do that to me more, as much. And being able to enjoy the process, because that's really what it is. It's just a process. It's not. At times we put end goals on the path, but those aren't permanent.
Sure. Absolutely, man. And I roll. I think I mentioned before. I roll mostly with my coach Abraham. That dude's a brown belt. He's obviously way better at jiu-jitsu than I am. And he beats me always, like every time. Like when we roll, we'll do techniques for about 20 minutes, and I might do some technical sparring. Like I'm working a lot on half guard and deep half guard right now. So he'll be like, all right, I'm going to get into your deep half, and you need to figure out how to sweep or submit, and I'm going to fight you every step of the way. And that's hard. That's hard to do. And normally I lose that battle. But I love the process, and I love Abraham, and I love jiu-jitsu. So the process itself is more valuable to me, I think, than the belts or the competition or the whatever the end goal is. I think the day-to-day grind for me is really what brings it out. And
that example you gave, I love it. Okay, put me in deep half and let's work from this spot. Okay, it's an area that you either want to work on or need to work on. It's the same thing as when you tell somebody, I want you to call this person and ask them to support you on a monthly basis for your mission project.
Absolutely.
Like, it's the same thing. It's like, this is the area that you need help on. Let's target that right here. And even send them somewhere that's a little bit easier to work with. Like, get them somebody who won't, who will be supportive of them ultimately, and help them get that part of their game up and running.
Yeah, definitely. Or I might send somebody to a Nicaraguan cooking class, and they're like, well, I barely speak any Spanish. I was like, well, this is what it's going to be like, go to a Nicaraguan cooking class. And we get so much, panic involved, and we kind of hype these things up to be more than what they are. And they walk into this cooking class, and these people love the fact that they're there, and they're so excited, and they're, being very gracious, and they're using all of the simple Spanish words, and they're speaking really slowly, because ultimately, here's what I think that we don't really understand. Ultimately, people want you to succeed. They want to be a part of your journey to succeed. We feel like people are against us, and they're out to hurt us, or they're out to prove us wrong. But I think generally speaking, most people want to help you be better.
Yeah, and I think that's what you feel on the mats with jiu-jitsu. It's like you hit me with that Kimura twice today. Hey, what did I do wrong, or what did you do to get that? Like, and most of the time, the people will totally share with you everything that happened to make that Kimura work.
For sure. I just had this exact experience. Maybe I think it was yesterday. I'm doing this knee slice. He's kind of like, he's got an open guard, and I'm trying this technique where you lean on the knees and I'm on my toes and I keep my head down, putting a lot of pressure on the knees. And I'm either trying to push to one side and get to the back, or I'm trying to step in and knee slice across. So I step in and knee slice across, and I got one hand posted. I got my knee on his thigh, and I got the underhook, and he's got his other knee as a knee shield. You know what I mean? Can you visualize? Okay. And I'm like, I'm pushing. I can't figure this out. I'm gassing myself out trying to get around this knee shield. And I'm like, I don't get it. Why can't I get past? I feel like I'm doing everything that you told me to do. He's like, why don't you push my knee with your hand, man? It's so simple. I said, so this hand that I posted on, I don't have to post on it. I could just pick it up and push his knee out of the way and continue to pass the guard. So, it's that kind of stuff. I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean, because I live it out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I do a lot of the stupid stuff that should seem, and as soon as I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so dumb. Why didn't I just push his knee? But, what can I say? I can't be great at everything.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is not intuitive. It may seem weird to do something, but that's why we have to learn the techniques. We can't just make them up. If you could just make up stuff, that would be a very intuitive thing, but it's not. That's why we have coaches. That's why we have to, talk with our training partners and work, after the roll to figure out what happened. It's not an intuitive
definitely.
process, and that's it's probably the same thing you're seeing with the people that you work with to try to help them become better missionaries. It's like if it was intuitive, you wouldn't need help to do this. So let's figure out what's going on to help you get up to where you need to be.
Yeah, let me tell you another great lesson I think I've learned from jiu-jitsu that directly applies, I think, to everybody, but particularly to my industry, and that's humility. So humility is what allows us to help people without feeling like we're lording over them, that we can help them up, kind of like when you're able to give somebody food without reminding them that you're feeding them, kind of thing. So I think I'd mentioned before, or maybe before you were recording, that I didn't always do. I'm kind of new at jiu-jitsu. I just belted up the blue. So I was heavy lifting, and in my gym where I was heavy lifting, I'm a big guy. I'm 6 foot, got a beard, I'm 200 plus pounds. Most people in Nicaragua are pretty small. They're just not that big. So they're benching 90, 100, 120 pounds, something like that. I'm loading up 220 pounds on the weight. So the humility was not there. I was not humble about anything. I'm slamming the weights. I'm talking about, slam those weights on, rings out throughout the gym. Everybody looks at you. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
There was no humility in what I was trying to do. So then I go to jiu-jitsu and I start getting humbled by a guy who's smaller and better than me. And I realize that I didn't have any real humility in my life, which is weird to say for a Christian and a pastor and a missionary. And I thought that I had humility until I really understood what humility was. So then I started really kind of developing this idea of being humble about what you're doing. And in our kind of work, it's very social aspect. So, we're helping people up. We're giving away education. We're giving food. We're doing all of these things where it could very easily be like the great white hope swooping in to help these underprivileged people. And I think jiu-jitsu has really I'm still trying to, you have to bear with me because I'm still trying to fully form this idea. Jiu-jitsu has really developed out my humility in a way that I want to come alongside people and help them get the opportunities that they may not have already had. And I can try really hard to not be great white hope. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Something about being beaten every day and feeling weak and stupid helps me. I don't know if this is probably the worst way to say it. Maybe you shouldn't record this part.
No, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Helps me kind of get to a point where I am not strong or proud when I'm working with people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, when I'm coming alongside mothers who are, 16, 17 years old, living on a dirt floor. I'm not walking in broad shoulder, chest out. I can walk in now and I'll sit down and I speak softly with them. And there's a lot of love in what I do. I'm not stepping in and saying, you just need to do this. This will be the right way to do it. I'm going to help you. You're going to be successful because I'm here. It's more like, hey, let's be successful together. Let's work on this together. Let's, get your kid. I'll do whatever it is that you need me to do. These are the things that I'm able to do. You can take advantage of all of them or none of them. I just want to be here, love on you guys, and help you do the best that you can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's thanks to jiu-jitsu, dude. That's
Cool.
Definitely thanks to Coach Abraham beating me every day. The Bible says that in our weakness, God is made strong. You may have heard that before. That didn't really, that's something that doesn't make sense to a lot of us, but I can tell you right now, I'm a better missionary because I get beat on a regular basis in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. We've all seen the guys in the gym who are quite huge and have the confidence to go, also huge. And it's a lot of times hard for them to get into the jiu-jitsu gym and to stay there because I think it's easy. The path is easier to go back to lifting weights and feel good about it versus every day this Abraham is kicking my butt. That's not easy. But
no, it's not easy. But we have to be able to do hard things. We're built. Human beings are built to accomplish hard things. And we're built in a way that when we get through hard things, we're stronger on the other side. That's just how we're created. Whether you're an atheist or whether you're a Christian, no matter, where your line of thought comes from, we are built to accomplish hard things and be better on the other side of it. And jiu-jitsu, it'll do that for you. It'll give you a hard thing. It's kind of manufacturing something difficult in your life, particularly for people where things come easily. I would say I'm probably pretty good at everything I've ever done, whether it be being a missionary, public speaking, fundraising. I hit the 85% mark pretty quickly with very little effort. But jiu-jitsu, man, that's what humbles me. I step in there and I get beat, and I realize that, I'm not amazing at everything. And that makes me better, I think, as a person and also in my ministry as a missionary.
Yeah. Wow. Just imagine how much harder it would be if you were 140 pounds. Yeah,
I can imagine. But yeah, definitely.
People can do it. People. I mean, that's just
absolutely. Yeah.
And you can look at that as the opposite thing. Imagine how much better you would be if everybody you trained with was much stronger than you, and you were forced to use skill. Like, it would be very difficult to get up there, but it's just taking the negative and making it a positive. Like, I have to use skill because I'm smart. I have the ability to use a little bit of size and strength to make things work sometimes. I don't know. It's just people. Everybody's different, and you find it works for you.
I'm usually the dummy that Abraham shows people techniques on these days. If somebody else shows up to the class, he's like, Wayne, come on over here. Look how big Wayne is, and he kind of makes fun of my size because he's a whole head smaller than me, I think. Well, maybe not a whole head, but he's definitely smaller than me. And he says, watch this, and then he'll put me in a butterfly and just lift me up into the air, off of his back. He's like, look, I can just completely manipulate him because of jiu-jitsu, So, I think, that's me. I'm the dummy in the gym now.
Picking you does create a good dramatic effect and makes a statement. When the same thing when you see like a really nice throw, it's like, okay, who am I going to throw? I'm going to throw this person the same size as me, or I can pick somebody who's 40 pounds heavier than me and also demonstrate that the throw works if you do it correctly.
For sure. I get hip tossed a lot.
Yeah.
I know how to break fall really well.
That's good. Yeah, you got to learn that. Oh, man. I've had a blast talking with you, getting to know you. Where can people go to learn about what you're doing or maybe to support you?
So you can go directly to our website at enrichmissions.org, and the front page is a portal to be able to sponsor a kid if you want to sponsor a jiu-jitsu kid or an art kid, music, ballet. You can also find out more about us on Facebook. We pump a lot of media through Facebook, so you can see, visually pictures and stuff, what's happening at our enrichment center. You can also follow us on Instagram. We put a lot of media out there, and we're growing into other media outlets this year, but those are the three main ones.
Awesome. I'll put links to all those in the show notes. Any final thoughts or words you want to share with the listening audience?
I just want to thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I was really, I feel really honored that you would invite me to be out, and I'm always amazed that anybody's interested to hear about the stories of what I'm doing or anything like that. So let me just say thank you guys so much. And would it be okay if I prayed for you guys before I sign off?
Sure.
All right. God, I thank you so much for BjjBrick and what they're doing out there. I thank you for this platform. And, I like to thank you for jiu-jitsu and the way that you've grown me spiritually and how I've gotten closer to you through using jiu-jitsu. And I just want to thank you so much for these guys. And I pray blessings over their lives for what they're doing. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you. And thanks for hopping on here, man. Thank you, Wayne.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
And I want to thank Wayne for hopping on here and also just doing what he does. And he's using jiu-jitsu as a vehicle to help kids out. And I also appreciated what he's able to learn from jiu-jitsu and bring into his kind of missionary life, I guess, and learn a few things about our culture and the way we do things in the jiu-jitsu community. So that was really cool. And follow him, enrichmissions.org. There's a link in the show notes if you're looking, to learn more about him or what he does or support him or go down there and help them out. Whatever's calling you to whatever step is next for you, check it out there. It's all there. And if you go to the website, you'll see kids and stuff grappling. They've got a really nice website, and it's got videos of kids grappling and painting and doing their extracurricular activities, and see some good quality grappling there. So that's awesome. If you think a friend would enjoy this episode, please share that with them. That's been very helpful to having the show grow. So talk about it with your teammates and tell them to check out the BjjBrick Podcast. It's pretty simple. They can find it anywhere they find podcasts, or just Google search BjjBrick. And we're one of the top searches for BjjBrick. So, guys, I'm excited. This week we have a question of the week, and we discussed it a little bit before the show, and I think we're pretty all on the same page. But the question is, do I need a rash guard to train?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
It's not 100%. It's not. Well, I say yes. T-shirts don't cut it. They soak up the water. They hold the water. It gets all over your training partner. And I'm a big hairy guy, so nobody wants to see me with no T-shirt or rash guard on underneath. So, what do you think, Gary?
Another thing with T-shirts, especially loose T-shirts, your fingers get caught. Good chance to lead to a broken finger for your opponent. Never fun. And I told you guys a story here just a couple weeks ago, or probably less than a couple weeks ago. I was rolling with somebody who was wearing a loose rash guard, and they got side control, and the loose T-shirt. T-shirt was all over my face. I felt like I was getting waterboarded. Couldn't breathe, and kind of rough. But I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a $50 rash guard. You can go down to Target or Kmart and buy a $10 rash guard. That'll work just as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I only have a handful of actual rash guards. I usually just wear a dry fit T-shirt that fits snug. And,
I do the same thing.
Yep, serves the same purpose and costs about 25% the cost.
I prefer, if you don't have a rash guard, I am a fan, and I don't know, I'm pretty good at it. I have a couple rash guards, and I always have them in my gym bag. When they're clean, I throw them in the gym bag, so I always have them in there. But I think it's a courtesy anymore to wear something under your gi. As we try to grow the sport of jiu-jitsu, we have more people that are new and maybe a little uncomfortable with this. And especially if you're going to be playing something part of your game where you open up your gi and start using your lapel to choke somebody, and then you got Joe's big hairy chest, smash it up against your face. What is going on here? Like, is that what this person who may not understand? It's a totally different feeling when Joe puts a rash guard or even a T-shirt on under his gi. I always wear. I can't think of owning any short sleeve rash guards. I like long sleeve rash guards, and I wear the same ones under my gi as I wear to nogi. But it's for me, for the gi, it helps make things a little bit easier as far as not wanting a whole bunch of skin to skin contact, and I think that it's a courtesy towards my teammates that I'm not showing more skin. That nobody cares to see anyway.
Yeah, and if you're a female grappler and you've been doing this for any length of time, I'm sure you've already discovered this. But even for the women, I think the women feel more comfortable when they're wearing them, and certainly the guys feel more comfortable rolling with them. Things just stay where they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And
I get less skin irritations with my. I don't know if there's certain gis or whatever, but working on your back, moving a lot, the rash guard kind of acts as a barrier to not getting something abrasive against your back for that amount of time. So the T-shirts for no-gi, they've got to be fairly tight to pull that off. It's just so. I'll tell somebody, if you come in there, you're wearing an extra large shirt and you should probably be wearing a medium. I'm going to tell you, your shirt's too big. Like, I literally can't work without worrying about my fingers getting caught up in this and getting twisted, or I can't, weave my feet in and out. getting snagged up in your shirt. I don't want to be ripping your shirt. So that's normally not like a long conversation. It's also a sign that somebody doesn't really understand. So they're usually a new student. That if you wear a shirt that's 2 sizes too big, or even 1 size too big, whatever, it should be fairly snug. If you want to wear a T-shirt, you don't want to people get caught up in it.
I think here's a good standard. If anybody's been coming long enough, they should know this. And you come to class in an extra large T-shirt anyway, then T-shirt chokes are legal.
Legal. Yep.
I've never. It's been a long time since I've been involved in a T-shirt choke.
Yep. Well, it's because nobody around you wears a extra large T-shirt
anymore.
But yeah.
Either a T-shirt choke or pull that T-shirt halfway off over their head, and then
just like hockey.
Just like hockey.
Yeah. I've had people tell me they're going to start jiu-jitsu, and I can tell they're a little nervous about it, and they ask for advice. And one thing I always tell them, especially if it's nogi, hey, if you're going to wear a T-shirt, very, very tight T-shirt. If not, go buy yourself a dry fit shirt at Target or Walmart, or a cheap shirt there. But yeah, so if somebody's asking you about jiu-jitsu and telling you they're going to start for the first time, put that in there to give them, make it their first day a little bit better. Your first day is never going to be fun if you show up in an extra large T-shirt and you got Byron over there mocking you like he just said he did a minute ago. So yeah, that's a good way of somebody not coming back.
Yeah, I try to run them out of there. I just say your shirt's too big. It's getting caught up. I don't want to ruin your shirt. I wanted to choke you. So yeah, it's pretty simple.
What about
they're a good investment that for $40, or you could probably find some on sale for quite a bit less. I think I went to BjjFanatics.com and $35 for a long sleeve gameness rash guard that will probably last you hundreds of uses. Like rash guards last years.
That is the one difference between the actual rash guard and the dry fit T-shirt. You probably don't save any money buying the dry fit because over time you're going to buy more of them.
They wear out quicker?
Yeah.
They smell bad too.
Yep. So right now, I know that this will be air in a week or two, but right now BJJ HQ has long sleeve rash guards for $35. So it's 40 by the time you pay the shipping, but that's not bad.
That's where Joe always goes to find stuff.
Yeah, I need a new gi, so I'm watching it right now.
Well, yeah, so fairly simple. I don't think you're flat out wrong, and I just feel like that it makes it a better training environment if people are wearing clothes underneath their gis. Or I guess men. I'm assuming women are wearing something. Yeah, I remember when I was at ADCC with my wife and we were looking at social media stuff, trying to figure out, I was trying to explain to her who this person is, who that person is, and I pulled up, and I'm not trying to talk negative about anything, but I pulled up, let's leave it anonymous. I pulled up one of the teams. This is a big team. You're going to see this name a lot, and here are the guys that are on this team. And they had a picture of their training room, and it was like 40 people, and probably 20 of them didn't have shirts on, and there wasn't a woman in the group. Like, I don't know if that's a coincidence or if they just don't have a women's team, but I would imagine did that cause that? Like, all these guys rolling around with no shirts make it to where less women are there wanting to train? But yet again, this is their elite team that is going to ADCC, and doing that. But, like, they didn't bring any women to compete that year either. But I just maybe if they all wore rash guards, a few of their top women would be there helping them train and prepare for this. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. And if you're at a school where you can't, every now and then a woman will show up and want to train, and then she doesn't come anymore, like, maybe you guys start putting shirts on. I'm not a fan of grappling a dude without a shirt on. I'll let him roll somebody else. Lake Jackson. Joe, if anybody lives I know we have a lot of listeners in Houston, and maybe they got a couple of teammates that listen to the show as well. Describe where that would be, and I guess would they know where Lake Jackson is, or?
Yeah, they would know where Lake Jackson is if you're new to Houston and you don't. If you take I-45 south, it goes to Galveston, and if you take Highway 288 south, it goes down to Freeport, Texas. And Lake Jackson is in between Houston and Freeport. We're about 50 minutes south of the city.
And how far are you from another, I don't know, Dallas or some other major city?
Dallas is another 3 hours or so, 3 or 4 hours north of Houston, and San Antonio and Austin are each a couple hours to the west/northwest. So pretty good, couple 20, 30 million people living in that area. So
yeah.
A few people.
There'll be a few people around. So if you want to make the drive to Lake Jackson, we're going to do everything we can to make this an amazing experience. And me and Jake were game planning how we're going to teach, and I think we might flip the order. I might go first, and Jake might go second, and then he'll build off of what, because I do have. So my seminar that I've structured is taking the back, and then once you get on the back, keeping that, and I have some principles of control that have really. I worked with a guy yesterday on it, and how to finish effectively, gi or no gi. Joe, most of your school is gi? They prefer, yes. So we'll just do gi. And I got a detail on the bow and arrow choke I like to show. I think it helps make it a little tighter. I got details on getting under the chin. And so the whole thing. And so Jake's going to show leg drag guard passes that ultimately could lead to the back. So these two seminars go hand in hand together, and me and Jake are really good friends. So you'll have two guys that have worked together a lot, kind of running a day of jiu-jitsu. And my whole thing about this back seminar is really that's what it is that's where we should always be trying to go in jiu-jitsu. So, like Gary wants to do a Kimura on me, that's great, from his guard. He should also be perfectly happy if he could sweep with that Kimura to a better position. Like, yes, always, attacking submissions is great, but always be trying to upgrade your position as well, which makes your attacks a lot easier. If just take the comparison, if I'm in a purple belt's guard, like the average purple belt, and I'm an average black belt, which I don't know what those terms mean, but I'm not real worried about it. Like, yeah, they could tap me out, but until they get like an actual threatening position, as far as threatening a triangle or threatening an armbar, or striking good angles, I'm just working my game and that sort of thing. Put a purple belt on my back, and I'm worried about it. Just because the position has just changed so much and is so much more dominant that I've got to if I don't get out of this, they're going to catch me. And so just is it easier to tap a black belt out from your guard as a purple belt, or to take a black belt's back and then work to tap that black belt out? I would argue that get their back first would be a good move to get you more submissions at a higher belt rank, and that's really what it is. We're going to always be gravitating towards these dominant positions that are back and mount, and for me, back has the highest finish rates, so that's where I've been focusing a lot of my energy on. Any thoughts on that? You guys both attended the seminar I taught at the last BjjBrick camp, which will be very similar to this one.
Yeah, and I know I brought this up numerous times, but you definitely helped my back control out. My back control is 100 times different now. I feel like my game's much better. And you talked about Kimuras too. I throw Kimuras off of back control. So I do want to, like Byron said, I do want to improve my position, and it just makes you that much more deadly.
Well, thanks, Gary. And I've actually, just because the type of grappler you are, you always kind of tinker with things. You've showed me some things fairly recently about controlling the person from the back position, and I've made changes, and I've always wanted to improve my seminars.
Why, thank you, Byron.
Well, thank you, Gary, for sharing. I mean, not only did you implement it on me with great effectiveness, you told me what you did, which is very nice.
Well, I hate to say it, but you did the same thing to me. Byron, when I roll with Byron, he's got a very good back control. I mean, let's say I rolled with him 2 years ago. I used to hate getting his back control. It was really tough to get out. And basically what was going to happen is I was going to go to sleep. He, like Byron said, you progress positions. He would get to that position, and it's like the beginning of the end. And so basically Byron had this seminar, and it was all the stuff that was being done to me. So I see what was being done to me, but then I use it for my own game. And when I say I drilled it, I probably spent 6 months just working on the basic stuff. I'm not talking about working on a rear naked choke or whatever, for, bow and arrow, which I don't train in the gi, but, any of that stuff from back control. I was working on basically, positioning, getting my legs in the right spot. I found out I was doing one thing wrong with my bottom leg that changed it. My head wasn't always in the right position, and those little things made the biggest difference in the world. So now when I got back control, I'm always looking at pressure on the hips, turning them how I want them to turn. I'm making sure my head's in the right position. And I never worried as much about my head right off the bat as I do now. So once I started doing that, my whole back control changed. And then because my control got so much better and the training partners I was working on, my control got so much better, they were putting me in it. So now my defense got so much better too. So just by working offensively, your training partners are going to get that too. So now I'm going to have to work it defensively, and you just become an overall better grappler. So helped my game out a lot.
Well, one thing I think we need to stress more about the seminar is not expensive.
$50 for 4 hours of quality instruction, and there'll be grappling going on before and during the break and after as well. So it's a good value, man.
Yeah, I $50 was what I typically pay more than that for one seminar. And so we're just kind of, I'm excited to come down there, go to Joe's school, meet some of his training partners, meet some people I've heard so much about and talked to a few of. And $50, we're really covering expenses here. It's going to be fun. And I think we should have bragged about that more as we promoted this, because, it could easily be a lot more. But yeah, this is $50, 2 seminars. It's got a good, strong theme, 2 different instructors, lots of good times, and we'll be happy to train with you guys and get some mat time. Yeah, there's a break at lunch. There'll be a link in the show notes to this that you can go order your ticket. But yeah,
Joe, talk about the acai.
Yeah, 50% off acai. So the school's got a good acai bar, and during the hour break, you can walk across the street to Denny's or whatever you want to do. But if you want to just have some acai, we're doing it 50% off.
Denny's?
Yeah, so stay at the school and have some acai.
Yep. I don't think anybody's going to walk across the street when you got acai in one hand and Denny's in the other.
to kind of bring this all back together, if you do go to Denny's, at least wear the rash guard.
There you go.
Wear 2 rash guards.
Oh, man. I think the next step in the evolution of jiu-jitsu clothing is just a full body suit, including feet, like the little feety pajamas style,
Well, what about
a latex? You just walk through a booth and it sprays it on.
That
would work. But what about the one thing I'm thinking of? We really need to protect ourselves, especially with the coronavirus. Like maybe, you remember the movie The Boy in the Plastic Bubble? Maybe have plastic bubble hamster wheels, and that way we won't get any of these diseases or gunk that is being passed around. And plus, you could steamroll over your opponent and roll right over the top of them.
Gary, I'm on to you, man. I think that secretly you're trying to quote or talk about a movie every episode. It's because I just edited the other one a couple of days ago, and you talked about what was it, Mad Max or something?
Yeah, Mad Max. No, I did Beyond Thunderdome.
Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah,
I'm on to you. Keep it going. I like it. Every episode, Gary, just throw in a movie in normal conversation and see how it sticks.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing.
Well, because I caught you. It's too obvious, Gary. I mean, come on. But yeah, good luck with that, Gary. So enjoy us in the next weeks as Gary tries to get a movie out in every episode. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Joe will record something down there. I don't know. It's always fun to kind of do some stuff. Who knows what's going to happen? I want to mention our Patreon support team. Thank you guys for supporting us on Patreon. You could go on there if you think this show is something you want to help continue to help us do what we do. Most people pledge between $1 to $3 an episode. And I mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch. Also, I'm bringing patches to the seminar. So that's one way to get a patch. Another way to get a patch is there. Anyway, sidetrack myself. Yeah, I'll mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch as a token of our appreciation for your supporting the BjjBrick team here. Check us out on Facebook. I'm butchering this. Isn't this going great, guys? We have a private Facebook group for the Patreon supporters, and where we talk about behind the scenes Gary and have fun.
Yeah, and we rely on that private Facebook group to shape the direction of our conversation when it comes to our topical episodes these days. So
that has helped. That helped a lot last week. So that's true. We're going to use that more and more, as I hopefully remember. But anyway, I want to thank Wayne Tingle for hopping on here and sharing what he's doing. And if you're able to check him out and support him, do that. Until next week, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to watch Die Hard.
Train hard, train smart. Train with us in Lake Jackson next week and get better at jiu-jitsu. We'll see you guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.